Hello, Laziali all over the world. Welcome to another episode of Lazio Lounge. I'm Vittorio Campanile, with me, Alistair McKenzie, and we have to talk about the second straight victory for Lazio. Alistair, it was a while since this last time happened. Not bad performance against Verona. That, yes, had a lot of players missing. Kumbulla, we know all about that. Wasn't playing. He's injured. But still, Verona is a very dangerous team, and winning 5-1, it's definitely a good performance for Lazio. And we have to say, Alistair, Lazio's back. After the restart that wasn't very, very encouraging. Finally, we are seeing the old Lazio, I would say.
Yeah, it does feel like that, doesn't it? And it's strange how quickly that's turned, where it's kind of gone from, cautiously being optimistic after Udinese and then taking positives from the Juve game, and all of a sudden it feels like we're back to where we left off again. Despite, and it's quite easy to forget at this point now that we know we've won the game 5-1, but we did actually come from behind again for the 8th time this season.
Yeah.
Which is more than any other team in Europe, supposedly. And yeah, they still feel the need to do that, even when we're going to win again game 5-1, just to make sure that we don't get too relaxed.
And again, Alistair, another silly mistake of Lazio defender. We said it already against Juventus, 2 silly mistakes that allowed Juventus to win that match. And again, against Verona, a silly mistake from Luis Felipe. The Brazilian looks a very, very good defender, but then sometimes switch off his mind. And in the last 3 matches, this is the second mistake. If you are fighting for the Champions League or for the Scudetto, this is far too much from a key defender like Luis Felipe.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like he was kind of tricked as well a little bit. It was a mistake, I suppose, but I kind of watched the replays and he doesn't make an effort to tackle him. He doesn't try and win the ball. He's just kind of running, and he doesn't anticipate that. Was it Zaccagni who won it? I can't remember now, but just kind of runs across him, and yeah, it's the classic clipping of the heels. And it is a penalty, but maybe he should have just been a bit more alert to that.
Yeah, I'm talking before that. I have doubts on the penalty, but he's silly to let the ball slip behind him instead of controlling and maybe pass it to Strakos. That's the biggest mistake. The penalty, again, I don't want to talk about the ref because he has been awful yesterday. But the stupid thing about letting that ball slip without thinking about the Verona player who's chasing the ball, that's where I think Luis Felipe made a terrible mistake. And that's where, it gave me the impression he already thought the ball was out and switched off and thought immediately at what to do next. No, it's too early.
Yeah, well, I think it is something he needs to cut out of his game, for sure. But it was encouraging again to see that this team just continually knows how to fight back from difficult positions. And to be honest, it wasn't really a game where, again, kind of like the Cagliari match, where you didn't feel that worried about it necessarily because the performance wasn't suggesting that it was going to be a complete disaster. But it takes that kind of mental strength, and I suppose as well that experience of having done it so many times already this season to actually know that you can get back into the game. And yeah, I don't think any of us would have expected it to get to 5, but Vittorio, we got to talk about our man Ciro, the man who made this happen, because a hat trick, obviously 2 of them penalties, but the other one being an absolutely incredible goal. And for me, that goal sums up this Lazio turnaround now. That's the kind of thing that Lazio and Ciro were never even going to attempt a few weeks ago when they were in this terrible form. And now it's just all working again.
Yes, absolutely. And as Nando pointed out yesterday, I think 95% of the penalty that Lazio took were thanks to Ciro Immobile or were fouls on Ciro Immobile. So yes, he had a lot of free kicks, but it's also a lot of penalty. But it's also true that most of the penalties are fouls on Ciro Immobile. So he deserved to take those penalties. And he improved, I have to say, because yesterday the two penalties were not bad at all. I mean, the Verona's goalkeeper had no chance to get there, and obviously the goal in between was simply unbelievable. Now 34 goals. He's 3 goals ahead of Cristiano Ronaldo, who missed a penalty. So, guys, when you talk about, penalty, you still have to score them. It's not automatically that you have a penalty and you already score. Cristiano Ronaldo, since the restart of football, already missed 2 penalties. So, it's not all the time that you score every time you take a penalty. So, 34 goals is simply unbelievable. And as someone else pointing out to us, Lazio is going to play against Brescia and Napoli, 2 teams that have nothing to ask for the rest of the season. So there's a big chance that, Ciro Immobile could increase and reach and beat Higuain record.
Yeah, which, just to clarify, is 36. So he's 2 goals away from it, but also he's level with Lewandowski in the European Golden Boot standings at the moment. Obviously, the German season's over, so Lewandowski's going to have 34 either way. But where the difference is with that is that Lewandowski, if they finish level, will win the Golden Boot because he's played fewer minutes, if I'm right. I think that's the tiebreaker when they're level. So yeah, I mean, it's funny. It's not exactly the end of the season excitement that we were hoping for. Watching Ciro Immobile try and break some records, but it's, I mean, I think he deserves it, yeah, without doubt, and it would be a nice way of kind of crowning an incredible season that he's had. This penalty discussion really annoys me. It kind of got to me this morning, and so I kind of took to Twitter to point out that penalties don't go in by themselves. You do get good and bad penalty takers. Ciro is an incredibly good penalty taker. To score 13 out of 14 penalties is a level of consistency that very few penalty takers are capable of. So yes, it's not always as simple as saying penalties are irrelevant and shouldn't be included in a Capocannoniere race. It's a ridiculous suggestion. Penalty is harder to score than a tap-in. It's not like every goal from open play is going to be a lot more technically difficult than a penalty is. So yeah, it does annoy me a little bit, but let's not take it away from him. Either way, he's top of the scoring charts, open goals and altogether. So yeah.
And we have to thank Monkey for this. Let's not forget, guys. He sold the Ciro Immobile to Lazio for 8 million euros, the half that Roma paid for Edin Dzeko. So, every time Ciro scores, remember to thank Monkey, because without him, Ciro probably wouldn't be in Roma and scoring all that goals. Alistair, again, as we Luis Alberto plays well, Lazio performs well. Again, yesterday was a good performance by Luis Alberto. And there was this little show at the end of the match, the second penalty. Luis Alberto went there to take it, and then suddenly he turned back and said, "No, come on, Ciro, you take it. You have to win the Capocannoniere." So, you see that there's a good relationship between players.
Yeah, although I do remember getting a bit frustrated when they handed Correa the penalty against Bologna earlier in the season because they thought he needed a goal and then he missed it. He didn't win the game. So, yeah, I mean, it's nice to have team unity, but I think you should still stick to the plan at every opportunity. So, yeah. No, I mean, and like you mentioned at the very start, but let's not forget, yes, Verona have kind of dropped off a bit and don't have an awful lot to play for anymore, but this is a really good Verona side who have impressed a lot. When they came to Rome earlier this season, I was working at that game and just remember being so impressed by the way they defended in particular, and how well organised they were. So to score 5 goals against a team like that away from home is no mean feat. It's an impressive one, but I should say The second penalty for Lazio's fifth, definitely not a penalty for me. I think Ciro shouldn't be going down like that, and it's worth mentioning rather than ignoring, because you'd be infuriated if it went the other way. To be honest, on an evening of terrible penalty calls, has to be said.
Yeah, this is something that I don't love about Ciro. He tends to be too soft in a penalty box. I can understand that every striker does this, and the penalty, the second penalty for Roma was simply embarrassing. But yeah, I would avoid that, to be honest. You're ready for one, you don't need it. But we saw worse penalty than that. So yeah, I agree with what you said. Still, 34 goals, it's incredible. Let's not forget, guys, that Verona was the team that stopped the winning streak of Lazio. So this wasn't an easy match. Ambarba, it's a very good player. Fiorentina looks to have made a great signing. So yeah, Kumbulla was missing, but this was still a very good side. So this is a very important match, a very important points. And now Lazio has the same point of Atalanta. Obviously, there's a huge goal difference for Atalanta. But let's not forget that Lazio will play Wednesday against Brescia at home. Brescia is already relegated. Atalanta and Inter has complicated match. Inter is playing against Napoli and then against Atalanta. So if Lazio win the next two matches, will be automatically third. And as Inzaghi pointed yesterday, we want to finish second because we think we deserve that position. And I think this is the right attitude for me. And I hope that really the players will play these last two matches like they were so important.
Yeah, and Brescia is about as much of a tee up as you can get at the moment in the end of the season. Obviously, already relegated, and it's a home match as well, so that helps. So yeah, I mean, I think so too. It's not again what we'd hoped for the end of the season. I have seen a little bit of disagreement from Lazio fans about this, about how to approach the end of the season. I think there's no doubt about what they will do, which is play the strongest team and do as well as much as they can to finish second. But there is a line of argument that Lazio are better off at this stage protecting their big players to make sure that there's no nasty unexpected injuries when we don't need them, and actually give out opportunities to players who otherwise wouldn't be getting them. The thing is, I suppose, that's what we've been asking for even when big players weren't available, and it still wasn't happening. So the chances of that happening now are very, very slim. But what do you think about that idea of basically this being an opportunity now to just kind of rest guys or protect guys?
Well, I think if Ciro rests, he would be very, very upset because he has a target. He wants to win the Capocannonieri and score as most goal possible. So, and as you said, we've been talking about that since the restart, and it didn't happen. So I don't see it happening. And the other thing is, okay, the season is ending the 2nd of August, but the new Serie A will start half September. So there's 1 month to recover from injuries and things like that. So I would say that Lazio have to try and play the best team. It all depends on Brescia and what Inter Atalanta does in the same week, because obviously if Inter wins, then they are out of reach. So I would still try to play the best team available and see how things go. Talking about this, I was surprised to see Acerbi playing because he didn't train. Inzaghi said, I don't think he's fit to play. And then what happened? He starts and play all the minutes of the match.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this comes back to the same thing we were discussing a few days ago about how Inzaghi still can't trust Dennis Vavros. And I thought, again, it's another example. It's not what you want to be doing, risking players when you don't need to. I mean, it sounds like it was a risk considering how in doubt he was going into this game. But again, no Vavros. I mean, it's a real test for me to see what the future holds for Vavros, what happens on when is it? Wednesday night, Brescia? Tuesday?
Yep. Wednesday.
Wednesday. Yeah, that for me is a real test of where Vavros stands, because he has to start that game, surely. I mean, it's a home game against a team with very little danger in their side, let's be honest, and who are already relegated. Dennis Vavros been fit most of this time, and we spent a lot of money on him, and he's barely played any games. So when are we going to see him? I mean, that it's probably not the first thing that should have come to mind for me, but it was as soon as I heard Acerbi was playing. Is what about Vavro?
And we have to say that he came in yesterday and played quite well. I thought he was confident. He was in control, which is something we didn't see very often. So yeah, I think against Brescia he could start, especially looking that Luis Felipe keep making stupid mistakes. So maybe rest him a little bit will help him. And as you were saying, Brescia shouldn't be very dangerous. So yeah, I think it's time to give a chance to Vavro. My question is this a clear message from Simone Inzaghi? Said, look, I'm not convinced about Vavro. Let's send him away and find a replacement. Because obviously, if you're playing Champions League next year, don't expect Acerbi to play every single match Wednesday, Saturday, or Champions League and Serie A. He's not going to be able to do it, at least not at a great level. So Inzaghi has to trust someone else to play in that position. And honestly, I thought Vavro played well yesterday. And if I'm not wrong, I think he started just one match this season in Serie A, which is obviously not enough for a player that Lazio paid 11 million euros. Yeah, my wife left the mobile phone here and people are calling.
Popular man, as expected. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I mean, if he's not gonna start against Brescia, then he's not gonna start in the Champions League. So yeah, I think that's something to keep an eye on, because I don't know what happens next, whether he ends up going on loan, or we've got Wallace coming back now from loan. There's all these players who've been sent away who are going to end up coming back again. I mean, we've had a few different questions about other things beyond the game this week, and one of them actually from Massey was quite interesting, because it was about who of the players who'd been sent to Salernitana this season might come back and actually fight to get a place in the starting 11. There's quite a lot of those players as well. So what do you think about that, Vittorio? Because it is quite interesting when we've talked a lot about squad depth and who isn't being used during this run, but there's actually quite a lot of players that Lazio own who are out on loan at the moment who are going to be coming back as well. So what do you think, starting with the Salernitana?
Well, I think, for example, Bardi is a player that I would think about, especially looking at the depth we don't have on the wingers. Lombardi have proved in the last 3 years that he's able to play in the 3-5-2. That was the biggest question mark and the reason why Inzaghi sent him away. I think he can play on that side. He had a very good season with Salernitana this year. The biggest problem I have is that he's often injured. And Lazio has already a lot of players like that. Very good, but often injured. So that's my biggest question mark. Kigne is probably one of the players I would wish to have back, because he had a very good season with Salernitana. He can play in different position. I think he's better suited as central midfielder than a left winger, but it's definitely a player that I would have in Oronzo, because Lazio is going out of Oronzo. What was it, from the 23rd of August, 10 days? So I think this could be the most interesting player from Salernitana to come back to Lazio. Let's not forget it's Champions League, so we need quality players. We just not need to have a lot of players. We need quality players.
Yeah, and Keane, I think I agree, is probably the most intriguing one. I mean, he's scored 11 goals from midfield this season. So I think when we were talking earlier about the fact that there wasn't, in the last podcast, about the fact that there's no one who can really come in and do what Alberto does, I don't think he's necessarily that player, but he is someone who at least offers an attacking threat from midfield by the looks of it. The problem is that there's not going to be, I don't think, as much time or room for experiment. You know, Alonso's been very useful for that in the past. I mean, don't forget that's how Alberto started playing midfield in the first place, was when he became a regista and Alonso as a bit of an experiment. But this year, yeah, I mean, the season finishes on Sunday, then the team goes away for a couple of weeks. They come back, they have about 10 days or so in Alonso, but even then the national team players are going to be getting sent away early because there's an international break at the start of September, and then we're into the season. So I think that this is the reason that the club have been looking at getting signings agreed early, so that they can come and make sure they're prepared for that. But I don't think there's going to be an awful lot of time this summer to be able to take big gambles or try different things out. I think that if players are going to be ready, that Inzaghi's probably already going to have quite a good idea about who he wants to be where.
But there's a thing. The Champions League will start at the end of October. So the season will start in September. The Champions League will start in October. And so the positive thing is Inzaghi, at least in September, will have 7 days to prepare the match instead of playing every 3 days. That could be a very important thing for Lazio. We have another question, Alistair, from David, that says, I think Lazio should sell Savic. I know he's scoring, but I find him very slow and unmotivated. Lazio should take 80 million and invest 40-50 on a new player. What do you guys think about it? Alistair, you go first.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think it's a little bit unfair, especially to call him unmotivated, because I think he's been very motivated and kind of proved that by his willingness to stay at the club and his behaviour and the way he talks and the way he plays. I guess he's also a player who looks a lot slower than he actually is as well, when it comes to that. But he's also half injured all this time and has been being asked to play every single game pretty much by Inzaghi. So I think he's a huge player for this team, to be honest. And if we're getting into the Champions League, I think the first thing we need to be doing is keeping hold of our best players. I don't think that we need to be getting rid of him and reinvesting money when there's already a decent financial backing in the club already to make some signings. I understand the temptation, but you need to be very certain about how that money's being spent, I suppose. You know, if there is an offer of 80 million, there's a big if, because in the climate of this summer, with the clubs in financial difficulty like they are, I don't know how many clubs are going to realistically come in and offer that anyway. But I think Tare's been pretty open about what's going to happen. You know, he's basically said if we get an offer like that, we're going to sit down and talk about it. So it is a possibility, but for me, I think the priority, as well as strengthening the squad, is keeping the players we've got who are already Champions League quality, because there's not much point in talking about spending all this money on players you think might be and sacrificing guys who you basically already know are, even if he's not had a chance to prove it yet.
Yeah, and 80 million euros, I think it's far too low for Milinkovic Savic. Yes, I know the COVID-19 changed the prices, but if Verona is asking 30 million for Kumbulla, first season in Serie A, then definitely Lazio can ask much more for Milinkovic Savic, who's proved his talent. So again, I'm not totally against selling Milinkovic Savic, but it has to be an unbelievable offer. And 80 million is not an unbelievable offer. So I would say no about that, knowing that Milinkovic Savic is looking forward to play the Champions League with Lazio, so he's not going to push for a deal. So yeah, and we have to say that, again, we said at the beginning, when Luis Alberto started playing well, Lazio improved, but even Milinkovic Savic can be decisive when he starts playing as Milinkovic Savic, as we saw in the last two matches, right? 2 goals. Yes, yesterday he has been lucky a little bit, but he has been dangerous all day, all 90 minutes, and this is very important for me. We had another question, Alistair, per Nielsen, that it's a little bit, going back to what we were saying before, right? If something can be done for the absurd number of penalty given in Italian football, we have a sort of average of 2 penalties a week, a game. which is a little bit too much. But I would say that the rule it's wrong, Alistair. The handball rule has been terrible, and if you apply it, then half of the of the chances in the penalty box are penalty. So
yeah, I mean, I think this is basically a combination of a few different things. It's, well, three different things for me. It's the introduction of VAR, combined with the changing of the handball rule, combined with the Italian referee's interpretation of all of these things, particularly the handball rule. And the problem is, by the book, although there are still wrong decisions being made, on the whole, a lot of these penalties that are being given, you can't really, have too many complaints about, because people are outraged by a lot of these handball decisions, but by the rules now, they are handball decisions.
Yep.
And there's nothing we can really do about that, or hope to do about that, until the rules change. So I think that to be honest, the one thing that could change is the interpretation of it, because it is ridiculous how many, absurd is the right word, how many penalties have been given in Italy this year compared to in, for example, England or Germany, where I believe the numbers have been a lot lower, despite having the same rules in place. Obviously, it's about the kind of how the referees have decided to read those rules. So maybe they could have a look into that, because I don't think we wanted to be in this position where, you're guaranteed to have, one or two penalties in every single game, because it does ruin it a bit, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. The rule is terrible. The Italian ref has been applying it, I think, even more carefully than in the other leagues. There have been some discussion here in England about a couple of penalty not allowed to the clubs. But yeah, I mean, you're nearly certain that you will have one penalty against or for your team every time there's a football match, which I think is too much. So I think there are going to be some changes, but we'll see probably next season, even though, again, there's not that much time to talk about changing all these rules and the VR application. So we're going to see what happens. Going back to the match, we have to say that one player we don't talk a lot about had a very good performance, Marco Barolo. Since Serie A restarted, he played pretty much all the matches, and he played quite well. Again, yesterday, not in his favorite position, but he played very well. So, people said he's old, he's not able to run for all those matches. Instead, he's proving everybody wrong.
Yeah, I think he's stepped up during this period, and at his age, he's one of the ones you'd maybe be able to understand why he hasn't stepped up, because of the relentlessness of matches and so on. But I did read that last night he, as well as running the biggest distance, which he almost always does whenever he plays, he actually clocked the fastest speed of a sprint, not only in the match, but in the entire round of games in Serie A, something like 35 kilometers an hour, which for a guy in his mid-30s who has already played all these games before now is pretty impressive stuff. I mean, he's always really taken care of himself, been in great shape, great fitness and so on, and to an extent where I think people maybe overlook how good a footballer he actually is, because he does have this amazing stamina and amazing energy. But I mean, I think that he's proven his worth, and it'll be interesting to see what happens now, because obviously his contract's up very soon.
Yep. Alistair, before wrap it up, Inzaghi said the reason why Lazio start to perform well again is because Lazio recovers some injured players. Inzaghi was able to do some substitution in the last couple of matches. But then you go think about it and you say, well, Lulic is out, Leva is out, Radu is out, Lazzari wasn't playing yesterday. I don't think Inzaghi had that much option on the bench compared to what happened before. Do you think it's really thanks to the players that have recovered, or is simply that players pick up the form and playing better now?
Yeah, I mean, Kind of, yeah, I agree. I don't think there's been a massive change in terms of the availability and so on. I mean, compared to the Juve game, yes, because that was when things really hit their lowest ebb. But compared to when we were in that really bad run of form, I don't think so. I think the big difference is in really the attitude and the kind of the kind of confidence of the team, I suppose. And you talked about momentum before, and it's a strange thing because I think they did even pick up a bit of momentum just from the Udinese game, playing better there and playing better against Juventus. Even if they weren't getting the results still that they wanted, it was just being able to show that they could play better than they had done before. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't think it's really as simple as that we were in a terrible state before and we're better now, because it's great to have Correa back and so on, but I mean, come on, it wasn't like a hugely different selection to what we had earlier on.
Yeah, I totally agree. Alistair, again, do you have a stats before we wrap it up, or you didn't come prepared?
I haven't come prepared. I had my Marco Parolo sprint speed stats, so that's going to have to do for this week.
That will work. That will work. Again, as usual, thank you very much, Alistair McKenzie. Thanks to all you listener. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, on Spotify, on our YouTube channel as well. And if you love the podcast, please support us at patreon.com/LazioLounge. Good night, Alistair.
Cheers.